My name is Rosalie Wasserman Friedman. I was born in 1925, September 3rd, in Coon Rapids, Iowa. Who would think there were Jews in Coon Rapids, Iowa? But there were, more than my family. From Coon Rapids, as a very young child, we moved to Blunt, South Dakota, and that was smaller by far, maybe about 500 people. My father seemed to get restless. He'd buy a store, build it up, sell it, and move on. From Blunt, we moved to Yankton, South Dakota. I was still quite young. And back to Sioux City, where my mother was born. No, my mother wasn't born in Sioux City. She was born in Russia. She came to Sioux City as about an 11-year-old. We lived in Sioux City for a period of time, and then we moved to Omaha, and we've been here ever since. I love Omaha, wouldn't want to be anywhere else. We moved to Omaha when it was getting time for my older brother, Sidney, to be bar mitzvahed, and he needed to study for that. Well, let's see, where am I now?
Where did you start school, Roz?
I started school in Sioux City, and I was, I was about 11, and I went to Dundee School when we moved to Omaha. I have another brother. Well, my older brother was born in Coon Rapids also. My younger brother, I do believe, was born we lived in Blunt, but they didn't really have hospitals to speak of, and I think my mother went to Sioux City to have the baby, if I remember correctly. And that would be Jerry. And he's 5 years younger than I. My older brother was 2 years older than I.
Roz, tell me a little bit about your father.
My father was a very hard-working man. He was kind of hard on the boys, but not on me. He expected a lot from them, but I just kind of slid along merrily. He was born in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, one of 14 children. His parents came from Russia, and I think when they came, there were I think 2 or 3 children. The rest were all born in Sheboygan. They were orphaned very young. The older ones were a few married. The youngest one was probably 2. My grandfather died of a heart attack at age 49. My grandmother died at the age 50 from cancer. And the older ones wanted to take care of the younger children, but they didn't like the authority of Big Brother or Big Sister. And a lot of them were put in orphanages, and a lot of them ran away. And they were all very artistic. There were musicians and writers and teachers, professors. They all had a lot of ambition, and they sought the ends of that ambition out by themselves because they didn't want help from older siblings. I think today there's only one survivor, and he happens to be a famous one. His name is Dale Wasserman, and he's a big playwright, movie writer, television writer. He did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he did thinking. I can't remember the name. It's been played all over the world. It's, Man of La Mancha, which everybody's heard of. And it's played in every country, it's, in the universe. And he's the only one surviving. He's in his 90s. He was one of the younger ones that ran away from the orphanage, and he rode the rails, and he used to steal library books, and he's very self-educated. And from there on, let's see, I went to high school at Central, I went to the University of Iowa, I met Ike when he got back from the service, and it was kind of a whirlwind. I think I met him in December or November, and we got married in June. And just a little bit of our wedding day, it was 108 in the shade, no air conditioning. Very memorable.
Tell me about the wedding.
Well, the wedding was, it was kind of funny in a way because it was at the Blackstone Ballroom, and the flowers wilted and the candles melted. And we changed all the hot dishes to cold dishes. But it was a beautiful wedding, very memorable.
Who were some of the people that stood up for you?
Well, of course, for Ike, Louis Blumkin, his cousin, and I think it was Harry Goodbinder, and, oh dear, I think, I just don't remember right off. I'd have to go find my wedding pictures.
But it was a memorable wedding for you.
Oh, yes. I think weddings are memorable for anybody involved.
That's right.
And for me, my cousin Helen Novak, maiden name Helen Roden, and Ruthie Sokoloff, and Betty Kraft. And we went to Colorado Springs for a honeymoon.
How did you get there?
We borrowed my brother's car.
That was a long trip in those days.
Yes, it was. And I remember driving up to Pikes Peak in a snowstorm in June. Very, very scary. And we came back home, and Ike went to work at Nebraska Furniture Mart. And I used to go and help my mother. She worked with my father, and she kept all the books. And she would get a little behind sometimes. The only time she really took off is if they went out of town, or if it was a Jewish holiday and she had to stay home and cook for a couple of days. And unfortunately, I always helped, but I don't remember how we made some of those things. I could never duplicate Hertzimus. And gefilte fish was too much work. I didn't want to duplicate that.
Let me hear a little about your mother's side of the family.
My mother's side of the family, she came to the United States. Her brother came earlier and landed in Sioux City and established there. And he brought the rest of the family, which was 2 sisters and my grandmother, over when he got situated. I only knew one grandparent. The others were all gone before I was born. I think my brother Sidney was an infant when my mother's mother died. And my mother went through high school. She was 11 when she came over. She went through through grade school in like 2 years, and high school, and graduated, and she kept books for somebody. She was a bookkeeper. So when my parents were married, she still stayed in that role. She kept the books. And going back to Blunt, South Dakota, they'd never seen a Jew. And the first few days that the store was open, was dry goods, they just had people looking in the window to see what a Jew looked like, because they thought they didn't look like anybody else. And eventually they got very friendly with people, and they had a wonderful time there. They were very social with a small community, and very welcomed, and very, very sad to see them leave.
Do you have any personal recollections from when you lived in South Dakota?
Not particularly. I was just too young. I think I remember being bathed in a kind of a tub in the kitchen, but that's about it. And I don't know why I remember that. I mean, I guess maybe it was kind of primitive there.
Do you remember some of the conveniences or inconveniences you had in homes growing up as compared to today?
Oh, well, I mean, the first house we had in Omaha, I think, had one bathroom. That's an inconvenience when you've got 5 people. Not really. I mean, there was always a car, but only one. That didn't bother me so much, but it did my brothers.
What brought the Wassermans to Omaha?
Well, they were going to go in business with my uncle in Sioux City, and somehow or other it didn't work. And so my father came to Omaha and started his own business. And it was along the same lines. It was XL Merchandise Novelty Company. And it was very successful. They used to sell a lot. They put out a catalog. They sell a lot to schools, churches, carnivals, traveling carnivals. I know my father used to drive out into the country, surrounding towns to deliver things at night. And I went to Dundee grade school, took the bus down to Central High. I walked from Western Avenue to Underwood, where the streetcar ran. And sometimes it was very, very cold. But we didn't have any chauffeuring in those days. Today it wouldn't happen.
What are your summer memories of Central High School?
Central High, I don't know, I lived on Western and 54th, and there weren't really any Jewish kids in my neighborhood. And my closest friend was across the street, and she was not Jewish. Her name was Lenore Wilcox. And when I got to Central, I really had to start meeting people. I belonged to some of the youth groups, which was a good way to meet people. And my mother and father joined a bridge club, used to play like every other week, and became very close friends with one of the daughters of a couple, Bert Wine, who is now Bert Lewis. I don't see her often, but whenever I do, it's a big hug. We went through a lot of giggling through high school. And, eventually I met through Junior Hadassah and B'nai B'rith Girls, whatever. I had a broader acquaintance with more Jewish teenagers like myself. Um, I don't know. I remember, the sweetheart dances and the bow dances and all that, but not with, I don't really remember them too much.
How did you meet Ike?
Um, his cousin, Babe Cone, saw to it that we met. And we met at a surprise birthday party for Ruthie. And he had just come back from the service, and he came back with Jonas actually, and he was in the hospital at Fort Crook, and he'd just gotten out, and he was at the birthday party. And I had a date down in Lincoln the next day, go to the football game. And he asked me, what are you going to do after the football game? And I said, well, I may stay overnight with the girls at the sorority house. Or he said, well, how about if I come down and pick you up? We'll have a date. I'll bring you home. Well, I guess that's okay. And that's when we started dating, and that was in the fall of, let's see, I got married in 46. So it was in the fall of 45, late fall. And we started dating, and we just dated pretty constantly. And he asked me to marry him. I had started MIU at the time, and I think I was already back from Iowa and wanted to stay home. And we got married in June 16th, 1946. It's never been that hot since on that day. It was a record. And we had a little apartment on Jackson Street that was a house made into 3 apartments with a grocery store next door. And that's where our first child was born. And that was Janice. She was born in 1948. And from there, it was too crowded. It was 1 bedroom, 1 living room, 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom. And it was just too crowded with a baby. So that was the end of the war, and it was very hard to find any place. And friends of my parents, Dave Foreman, built these duplexes out on, it was about 27th and Laurel Avenue. And he let us rent one. And I remember it had a coal furnace. And I sure didn't know how to bank a furnace. Ike was worse than me in that department. So it was either hot or cold. We were either opening the windows or turning up the thermostat. But we got along okay there. And then we bought our first house. It was 2020 North 50th Avenue, right off Blondo. And it was 2 bedrooms, and it was, a big attic playroom by then I had Susie, who was born in 1950. And with 2 little children, I was, pretty busy. But I still managed once in a while to get a sitter and go help my mother. And she used to pay my babysitting money. And in that time, Ike's father was a partner of Mrs. B in the Furniture Mart. And after the war, there were too many son-in-laws on the other side, wasn't balanced. So he decided he wanted her to buy him out, which she did. And his father went into business with an uncle of Ike's, Simon Gorelick. and they bought Borsheim's jewelry. And they also bought Allen's Loans, which was around 16th and Harney, or a little farther down maybe. And Eddie Gorelick and Ike were in Allen's Loans, and Simon and my father-in-law, Louis Friedman, had Borsheim jewelry, and that was the beginning of Borsheim's for us. It was a jewelry store, and they kept the name because they figured people knew the name. But a couple of years after that, Uncle Simon became very ill. He had a tumor on the brain, and he didn't survive that. But before he died, he wanted Eddie to be his own boss. And so they made a dealing where Ike went to his father in Borsheim's, and Eddie had Allen's Loan to himself. And, you know, then when the children got into school, I started working at the jewelry store more often. Try to be home by when school got out. But I put in a lot more time there. And about 1971, Ranks had a store across the street, a surplus store, and they moved to different quarters, and the building was for rent, and there'd been growth in Borsheim's, and they were crowded. And gee, I'm thinking back all the time. I haven't thought about these things for a while. Anyhow, on a Sunday, and my brother helped, my brother Jerry. Unfortunately, when my brother Sidney was 39, he passed away from a heart attack. But my brother Jerry helped, and we got a whole bunch of these big canvas things like this, on rollers, and that's how we moved. On a Sunday, we had a few policemen protecting us, and we just fill up the bins, roll them across the street, and empty them. Come back and get some more. And it was a family move, I guess. Kind of fun. We had a lot of fun that day. And Monday morning we were set up for business across the street. And the store grew, and it grew. And in the meantime, the family was growing up. And my daughter Janice had gone off to college, Boulder, in Colorado. And she dated a fellow for a while, and he decided that she would really be perfect with his older brother. And it turned out to be true. And a very funny story. She brought him home for a weekend for us to meet him. And, Saturday night was the family night. We all went over to the gathering at Mrs. Blumkin's and sat around and chatted, and they told stories and jokes, and they took a good look at him, and it was a nice evening, and I think we kind of got away from it and went out to dinner. And when the next morning everybody kind of slept in, and the phone rang, I got up to put coffee on, and the phone rang, and it's my father-in-law. He says, "I want to talk to Ike." And I said, "He's still sleeping, Pop." And he said, "Well, when's he going to get up?" And I said, "Is something wrong?" No, I just need to talk to Ike." I said, "I'll have him call you as soon as he gets up." So he called him, but by then I didn't know what he called about, because everybody was up, and we were having breakfast, and, you know. Well, what it came down to was Donald, the young man Janice had brought home, Donald Yale, was sitting like this, and my father-in-law could see the sole of his shoe, and it had a hole in it. And he had it in his mind that if the guy can't afford to re-sole his shoes, how's he going to take care of my granddaughter? So we had a good laugh about that. They got along very well. He was a very good provider. He came into the business and he was very helpful in his skills in running a business. Not good on the floor, particularly selling, but very good as managing. And they had 5 children, beautiful grandchildren for me. One child just got married to an Omaha girl. He's 30 years old, and he moved here. And the next in line to him, who was really the closest, the older one is Adam, and he married Sarah Bai last September 5th. And they had a gorgeous wedding, a lot of parties. It was very beautiful. The only thing missing was Ike, but everything else was there. Alex, who's next youngest, was very close to Adam. And guess what? He moved here. You know, I forgot to tell you that that Janice passed away. And, well, let's see. I think she was 56. No, she wasn't. Her last birth was twins, a boy and a girl. In between middle was Andrew. And they felt that there was like several years between Alex and Andrew. And they felt that it wasn't fair that the 2 older boys had close companionship with a sibling, and Andrew didn't, so they decided to have one more child, and boy and girl. And they're now 18 years old, and they were 10 when Janice passed away. There was a lot of breast cancer, and not my family, but my father's sisters. And 6 months after she had the twins, she discovered she had breast cancer. And she fought it for 10 years, but it finally got the better of her. But anyhow, 2 years after that, Donald took the children and moved to Denver. And of course we missed them. At one time, all 3 of us, my daughter Susie, and her husband and 3 daughters, and Ike and I, and Janice and her family all lived in Tomlinson Woods. And the children could go back and forth. We all lived a block apart, and it was gated there, so it was really fun. We had built this house. We'd previously moved to a townhouse, but once all these children arrived, you know, there was no room. On Sundays when they would come over, they'd trip over people's feet. So I decided we needed a home again, and that's when we did that. Anyhow, we have 2 back now, 2 of Janice's children back, and I'm delighted. Next we have Susie, and Susie went away. All my children went to Central, and actually Janice's children went to Central, but Susie's children, they stayed out west for high school. but she has 3 beautiful daughters, 2 still going to school. Dana is 30, she's the oldest, and she's teaching down at UNL. Her field is political policy, and she's taking her PhD. And she's very interested in the state of Nebraska, and she would like to run for office here someday. We're hoping we'll have a governor sometime. Nikki is in New York. She's a big city girl, loves the big city. Worked for an ad agency until the economy dropped and decided to go back to school. And she's just graduating New York School of Interior Design. And I think she may even have a job to go to, which sounds really great to her parents and me too. And the youngest, Callie, has just graduated the Chicago Art Institute. And she's staying in Chicago for a while. She likes it there. And right now she's putting all her schooling to work. She's decorating cookies. And we get a kick out of that, but I guess her designs are really good. And Susie and Marvin, of course, have been in Borsheim's for all these years since we moved out to, well, no, even before we moved to Regency. And they are sort of semi-retired now. They go in by appointment. Susie still does some buying, and she's taken up a hobby of making jewelry, which she does a really nice job. And they spend their winters away. They go to Phoenix, where they seem to enjoy the warm weather. And we haven't even gotten to Alan. He's going to turn 50 next year on February 28th. And he went down to school in college in Arizona and came back. No, then he went to GIA school, gemological school, and came back, and we all worked in the store. It was a family effort, plus a lot of helpers, you know, as the store grew. And it was a great source of being together with family and watching the growth. I think, anyhow, Alan has 4 children. He had a second marriage, so 2 children are in Scottsdale, and that's Caroline and Whitney, and they're 19 and 14, and he now lives in California, and he manufactures jewelry. Surprise, surprise. And he makes very beautiful things, and loves California. I hate California. I don't hate it really. I just don't like that it takes so long to get it anywhere. It's not like Omaha, although Omaha's taking longer all the time, depending on where you want to go. But I enjoy living here. He enjoys living there, so I don't see them all that often. But I am going to go for his 50th birthday. Alan, we really had a shock with him. His birthday was February 28th, and you know, in that day they were still pulling numbers for the draft. And guess what his number was? 1. We weren't too thrilled with that, but then they dropped the draft, so we didn't have that worry on our heads. It sort of brings us up to date. Alan loves the jewelry business, and he He's got a personality like his father. Very outgoing, wonderful with people. And it sounds like his father when he talks. But that's pretty much up to date. Ike passed away 13 years ago, and I stayed in my home for a year, but the section of Tomlinson Woods that I lived in was like a nursery previous. It was all farmland. And I had these great, big, humongous trees over my house. And when the sun set at 6 o'clock, it set up my house at 4, because the minute it started lowering, the trees blocked all the sun out. And after a while, it was just 18-foot ceilings, and it was too big. And I moved to Swanson Towers, where I wouldn't move anywhere else. It's wonderful here. I've moved condominiums several times, but I'm in this one to stay. And, you know, I miss Susie and Marvin when they leave for 3 months. And they always say, well, come stay a few weeks. But I think I'm just more comfortable staying home. And that kind of brings it up to date. I miss working, but it's not comfortable for me anymore. Oh, I forgot all about Berkshire Hathaway. How could I do that? I think that was 87 that Warren Buffett, Berkshire, bought out the jewelry store, which Ike, didn't make any difference to him. He just worked still as hard, and I think that's why he picks stores where people don't care who owns it. They work the same way anyhow. And there was even more growth after that. And, Berkshire Weekend is always in Omaha in May. And they just bring in thousands of people. And those weekends are as big as Christmas. Amazing. Just amazing. It's like you're giving it away. But they do have special pricing for Berkshire share owners. And, my husband was always very charitable. I mean, he couldn't stand to see anybody suffer, couldn't stand to see anybody in need. He only did one thing when he sold the store. He created the Ike and Roz Friedman Charitable Foundation. He didn't want a vacation, he didn't want a new car, that's the only thing he wanted. And that was the first thing he did, the only thing he did. Otherwise, things went on just as usual. And we do take care of that. And I'm just finally turning over the bulk of the work to my daughter Susan. And we're getting the 2 older grandchildren, Adam Yale and Dana Cohn, interested, and giving over our ideas to them, as to where we like the money to go. And of course, the first of the list, and always they get the most, is the Jewish community. We very definitely believe that it is our responsibility to support the Jewish community. And after that, we're pretty generous with here and there, with the arts, with medical research, one of our later obligations that we took on was with the University of Nebraska, and their printing of books on the Holocaust, country by country. Germany was the first book to come out, and it will be by far the largest. Then they will go on to other countries that persecuted the Jews during that time. Other than that, you know, I read a lot. Naturally, I get my hair done, my nails, play cards once a week, like to go to movies, and get together with old friends. And I keep busy. And that's about it. I mean, that kind of is it. I also want to mention Alan's two younger children who are just precious and adorable. Nicole, who is 9, and Nicholas, who is 7. And they're very loving family, and they love their older sisters also. I'm very lucky, actually. I have a dozen grandchildren, and adding Sarah to that group makes 13. So I guess we have to get over that and have somebody else get married and start producing again. I have no great-grandchildren. My friends do. I kind of feel left out. But life is good, and I'm happy. You know, this has been kind of an experience. You know, I'm not very outgoing and saying things to all of you, but this is all for you to remember what I remember and what I want you to know about. One thing I definitely want you all to know about is that I love each one of you. You're all somewhat different from one another, and your differences make my life very interesting. I love your children, and I hope maybe that this will tell them a little bit more about Grandma. I know, Susie, when you're gone for 3 months, you and Marvin, I miss you. My days are a little bit emptier. I've gotten used to all the rest of them not being right here. And you know, of course, that I miss those that are not with us anymore. But life deals out, you know, you have to take whatever it gives you. And I hope that you can enjoy your life and have a full life. And I'd like to see some great-grandchildren someday before I depart from this life. So, you know, don't be slackers. Anyhow, my love to all of you, and I hope this amuses you or entertains you or whatever you get out of it. That's all.